here. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong resident of Southern Nevada. I have raised my children here. I've got 7 grandchildren that are growing up here. I'm a veteran. I spent 3 years in the Army.
Nice, Judge.
I spent 3 years in the Army, 1 year in training, 1 year as a training officer, and 1 year in Vietnam. I'm very active in the community here, in my church, and various other organizations, Boy Scouts and so forth. I've been here a long time. I understand the problems. I'm working hard to make sure that we have good solutions here. Thank you.
And Mr. Bunce.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Bunce, and I've been a political activist for about 10 years now within the Republican Party. I've helped various Republican candidates get elected across the country, and I've continued to fight for principles of the Republican Party, where we want smaller government, more personal freedoms. Competition is king. The more choices we give to the people, the better the outcome will be. As Ronald Reagan said, government is not the solution, it is the problem. Thank you.
And at this time, we'll start with the panel closest to me on my right, and we'll work our way down.
Okay, so this question's for Richard, and I'm pretty sure based on what you just said, I already know what your answer's going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway, if you don't mind. So the position we're in right now is it seems like the economy is starting to recover somewhat. And I don't really see is where the Nevada legislature has really done that much, either to create those jobs or to take those jobs away. So do you think it would be best as a legislature just to kind of stay the heck out of the way, let the economy recover on its own?
What business needs the most is stability. And what happens is when every session you go up there, the people in Carson City are tweaking or modifying taxes, raising taxes, moving them around. You can't, as a business owner, you can't sit there and predict what my tax rates are going to be 2 years from now. So how can I make judgments of expansions or doing anything whatsoever? Because it may be profitable, it may not be profitable, because a lot of businesses, their margins are less than 2%. So every time they go to the session, the rates change 2% or even more. They have no idea how to plan. So it's all about government doing less, so there's stability.
Okay, thank you for being here today. So how do you plan, both of you, Lynn and Richard, how do you plan to help veterans navigate the labyrinth of federal bureaucracy in obtaining benefits they deserve?
Well, as a veteran, I used the GI Bill, part of my education. You can't do too much as a state legislature to modify federal issues, but as a state legislator, I have had legislation to benefit veterans. For example, I had a bill that passed that allowed the widows and children of veterans who were killed during a conflict to have free tuition at our universities. So that's a help. I've been a strong advocate of veterans benefits and helping veterans, and especially the National Guard here in Nevada. The National Guard was kind of a stepchild for the rest of the military. With the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, the National Guard was just as active as the regular military was. And so my record is very clear and very strong as helping veterans.
At a state level, all we can do really to help veterans is make sure our economy is stable enough so when they return with the skill sets that they have, and they are some of the most skilled people we have in this country when they come back, that they have positions available to them. Now, for specific programs on the federal level, I suggest going to Joe Heck's office or Gene Heller's office, and they can help any veteran with that.
Good afternoon. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we can help people develop the proper defense mechanisms to have a level playing field when they do graduate high school and go on to college, and go out into the workforce? Because you speak about having less government intervention, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but at the same time, how are we properly equipping our students if they aren't learning these skills and even financial literacy with our veterans? How do we get that out to them? Either. Or you both can comment, please.
It's a community cultural problem for how we raise our children. We can't put a kid in school and say, it's your job to take care of them. Be the babysitter for 12 years. And then when they get out, you're going to blame some of the teachers that are just going to their job trying to teach. Their job isn't to instill culture, instill ethics. Their job is to give them knowledge. Culture and ethic comes from the family, the community, and the churches. It is not the government's responsibility.
Well, I have 7 grandchildren in the independent schools in Southern Nevada, so I'm deeply interested in it. I think our schools are doing a good job in some respects in preparing. We have career and technical education facilities throughout the valley. I believe there's 6 of them now. If you visit one of those, you'll see that they're very good at preparing our students for specific jobs as auto mechanics, as designers, in the medical field. We have at Rancho High School, for example, we have a forensics lab there that's second to none in the West. And so they are doing things to do that. We have some serious challenges in Southern Nevada for education. We have a very transient population. We have a very diverse population. There is no minority in the Clark County School District. We have a growing population. Once again, we've added over 100,000 people in the last 2 years, 316,000 students. Our classrooms are overcrowded. Our funding is one of the lowest in the country. One survey was the very lowest. So we have some serious challenges. We've done some things in the legislature to try to improve the education system. The governor is a very education-minded governor, and now he has the authority and has appointed the new superintendent of schools for the state. He appoints the state school board as well, and so the governor has more control than he's ever had. We've also passed legislation to make it easier to get rid of poor teachers, and so these are some of the things that we've done that will bring a better quality of education to our kids, so when they do graduate, they will be more ready for the workforce. By the way, we have some of the highest standards in the country. We haven't met them as much as we should have, but we have 4 exit exams, 4 proficiency tests. We have 22.5 credits, which is one of the highest in the country. So we are slowly improving, we hope. The governor also emphasized English language learners this past session. We supported that, where we will have more money going to English language learners, and hopefully then it will get them up to speed with those who are English as their native language.
I'd like to address the healthcare system, which is actually a disease care system, and most people don't realize that disease is actually a choice. How could we implement whatever to go from a true healthcare system from a disease care system?
Yes, unfortunately, it's indicative of our healthcare system where we don't treat people until they're already dying. Preventive care is fundamental to actually bringing down costs. We can do that in more of a cultural way, where we can advertise and make it more of a societal problem instead of a government forcing with a gun to your head, you will show up now and you'll do this in X, Y, and Z. Because what happens is the cost balloons when you give the power to the government to force preventative care, where they'll create an agency and have bureaucrats that don't necessarily ever see a patient, but they draft laws and they just become feature creep and blow it out of control. So then that's just another piece of the government we're funding that doesn't actually help people get care. So I would highly recommend through maybe advertising campaigns and things like that, and creating nonprofits that will help educate people about preventative care over any government mandates.
I think some of our healthcare providers are working toward, I know the one that I'm involved in, that we have a wellness program, and I've participated in that. They encourage healthy eating, healthy habits, that type of thing. I think the private sector can do more than the government. The government needs to keep out of the way and to be supportive rather than regimented of that. I was very disappointed when Obamacare was declared constitutional by the Supreme Court. I actually had 2 bills in the legislature to try to prevent that from coming to Nevada. And then, of course, once the Supreme Court made it legal, then Nevada had 2 choices. One, to either have their own healthcare exchange or to use the national healthcare exchange. And the governor decided, and I agreed with him and voted for it, to have the Nevada Silver State Exchange instead of the National Healthcare Exchange. So I've always tried to have more control over our healthcare in Nevada rather than in the United States government doing that. So this Nevada Exchange unfortunately hasn't worked quite as well either, but the National Exchange has been, of course, a disaster.
Hi guys, Dylan, thank you for coming. The ones that are successful right now are the ones that work day in and day out. Becoming successful is such a huge battle. It takes years and years and years. How do you feel about our government debating the idea of taxing the ones that are finally successful more to compensate for the ones who don't work or make as much?
I disagree. That's a simple answer. What government likes to do is if it moves, tax it. If it doesn't move, subsidize it. Which is completely wrong. You can simply let the market work and you'll get the most efficient outcome. Because what happens is when government gets involved and picks the winners and losers, they create barriers of entry for new competition. And when you create barriers for entry for new competition into a market, the ones that are existent become stagnant and they can rest on their laurels and they're unable to be challenged for supremacy in that market. And you get what you get right now, where prices go up and quality goes down, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's various industries where that's very, very, very obvious, such as cable, things like that.
Well, I think that to reward sloth is not a good thing. I drive a Ford product, I have all my life, because Ford stood on their own. They didn't have to have subsidies from like GM did or Chrysler did. And so I support a private enterprise and private enterprise standing on its own and not being rewarded by the government for sloth. I hope we never get to the point, and we're headed that way, and I've done everything I can to stop it, to keep the takers, or we have more takers than we have givers. And I think the current administration has promoted that, where we're rewarding the takers and penalizing the givers. And so I've always tried to be a giver, and I hope we can have that entrepreneurial spirit in America that got us where we are, and not have this thing of constantly subsidizing failure.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you, John. Thanks for coming out. Eric Morelli. My question here is well, one for Mr. Bunce and one for Mr. Stewart. Mr. Bunce, upon being elected, what would be the first thing you would want to accomplish in the legislature, and how would you plan on going about accomplishing that?
The fundamental thing that I want to create, and which will solve most of our problems because it'll force the legislature to put priority on line items, is zero-based budgeting. Right now, they use a system called baseline budgeting, where they just jack up 3 or 4% every year. Don't care really look at the programs if they're working or useful anymore, because they might have been created 10 years ago and no longer serve a purpose. So they sort of hide in the budget for years and years. Whereas a zero-based budgeting is you you allocate your perceived income for the biennial, and then you go through, you prioritize, like education will be first, but within education, there's departments, then you prioritize each department within education, and then even in those departments, they have to prioritize their programs. And then they have to present that to the legislative committee, and they have to fight for why does this still need to exist. And if we can get that passed, and there are a few Democrats that agree with it, so I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but that would solve all the underlying problems we have with taxation and inefficiencies within the state government.
Great, thank you. And then, Mr. Stewart, what is it that you believe you can accomplish in this next upcoming session that you couldn't accomplish in the last previous session?
Well, I don't have any grandiose ideas. I've been in the legislature now for 4 terms, and you've got to remember that Democrats are in control in the Assembly. So you have to work with them, and anything you get done, you have to work with them to get it done. We are a rather frugal state. We are one of the only 4 legislatures in the United States that meets every 2 years. We are the 4th smallest legislature in the United States. So we are a frugal state. We're about 35th in per capita spending. So a lot of people think we're like Congress. We're throwing money at everything, throwing money at education, we're throwing money here, throwing money there. We're not. We have a Ways and Means Committee that examines every item very carefully. We have a taxation committee that goes through taxes very carefully. We were able in the last 3 sessions to stop a tobacco tax, a liquor tax, a 4.5 business tax, a service tax, what we call the fund tax. All those taxes were stopped. So we are quite a frugal state. We don't have a personal income tax. We don't have a corporate income tax. We don't have an inheritance tax. And so my main goal, realistically, in working with the Democrats, is to keep things level, not to increase taxes, but to keep our government lean, which it is. We'll try not to make it mean. I support the budget of the governor. I think he's a great governor. I think he's bringing us out of this recession. We've had 48 months in a row now where we've had growth. And so my priority will be to keep a steady hand, follow the steady hand of the governor, to get us out of this recession. We're coming out of it slowly and steadily. Things are improving. And taxes, my opponent mentioned we need stability. We need predictability in business. And that's what we've had the last few years, is predictability. There were no taxes raised in the last session. And if I have anything to say about it, and I will, there won't be any taxes raised in the next session.
And before the next question, I'd just like to remind the candidates we're supposed to keep our answers down to a minute, but I think we're doing fairly well. Daphne?
My question is for both of you. When it comes to civil liberties in our country right now, the federal government is grossly violating a lot of our Bill of Rights. Whether it's the NSA collecting all of our data, whether it's the impending domestic drone program, even though we have no privacy laws enacted, or whether it's the National Defense Authorization Act. We constantly hear that the state legislatures can't push back, but when you look around the country, a lot of state legislators are stepping up and putting forth legislation to fight the federal government's encroachment upon our civil liberties. So if you get legislation, whether it is anti-NSA, anti-NDAA, or drone privacy next session, would you be supportive of protecting civil liberties through the Nevada legislature?
Yes. Was that short enough?
That's the short answer. The long answer is the 9th and 10th Amendment weren't put there as a filler to the Bill of Rights. It is there because the states have sovereignty over their people. And when they need to protect their people from overreaching federal programs such as spying, NSA, overreaching warrantless wiretaps and things like that, we can create laws. We can create privacy laws that protect our third-party data in banks and phone companies and cable companies to have the same protections under the Fourth Amendment that they need a warrant to look at them, just as if it's sitting on your kitchen counter. Right now, that doesn't exist. They can go pull that data without a warrant and spy on you all day. And that's one of the fundamental ways they're getting away with what they're doing, is they treat third-party documents as not your personal property, but it is. There are things we can do even on the county level. We can get sheriffs to actually protect our people from warrantless kidnappings. That's what was legislated in the NDAA, where the military can come in and take somebody without a trial and just disappear them. Explain to me how that's American, because I can't. At the same time, we can protect all the other amendments, the first, the second, even the third. You know, Henderson has the first constitutional case for the Third Amendment that police tried to go into somebody's household and to spy on one of the neighbors, and they wouldn't let them in. So they kicked in the door and occupied their house, which is the first Third Amendment lawsuit in the history of this country. It happened here in Henderson, Nevada. So I'm really proud of that, and I think Daphne's involved with that. So I think there's a lot we can do in the state to push back on federal overreach, especially in privacy. And it's nonpartisan. You can go across the aisle all day long with privacy issues and kid bugs. So we can do a lot in Carson City, and we will do a lot. Thank you very much.
What is your position on increasing property taxes? To both of you.
I'm against increasing property tax.
The fundamental structure of property taxes makes it where you can never own land. You're always paying rent to the government, even when you retire. Imagine the boom we could have in the state if we somehow restructured our taxes to be able to afford to strip away property taxes, where somebody can retire here in Nevada, just buy a house, and they're done. They can retire in peace and not never have to pay another dime except for electricity, water, and food. That would be such an explosion of population and taxpayers for paying sales tax and whatnot. So if anything we can do, I want to lower property tax, not raise it. And we can do that through restructuring.
Currently in Southern Nevada, we have a severe problem with foreclosed homes that are remaining empty. And especially in downtown city of Las Vegas, we have a real bad homeless issue. And what we're finding a lot is they're breaking into these homes, spending time in these homes, and then claiming squatter rights to the homes. If you know, recently in another state, a military member that came home from Afghanistan to find his house occupied had to pay court fees, go through the whole process to get an eviction. And to me, that's ridiculous. We have current city and county attorneys that agree with that a eviction would need to take place if a homeless person's been in a home in excess of 4 months. So would you guys, this is the goal, support a law that would redefine the squatter rights and make that a clear issue for the city and county attorneys?
I would definitely do that, working with the county people, and I have worked with county, various county lobbyists and so forth in the past to improve these type of things. Also, we need to work with the realtors. I have contact with the real estate people, and I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. And I think we'll be in the next session.
Yeah, it's largely going to differ from city to city, to county to county, across the entire state. So again, from the state legislature standpoint, we can issue recommendations and maybe put limits or caps on things. But for the most part, it's going to be a city or county question.
Okay. Thank you guys for showing up so far. I know it's been grueling. We'll try to make it short and sweet. The Bundy Ranch issue has been in the news of late, and we're not talking about the latest stuff. We're talking about the earlier stuff that has to do with property rights and state sovereignty. Richard, why don't you give me what you would want to do if you were elected as a legislature to help ensure the state, or not ensure the state, gets its property rights?
This is an issue as old as the state. It's actually older than the state. there was a constitutional law, or not, Supreme Court rulings, which, if you look this up, it's called equal footing rights, where when a state joins a union, it needs to be on the same equal footing as every other state already in the union. Otherwise, it's a subordinate to the other states. When Nevada state was created, we had a gun to our head saying you will sign over the majority of your land in order to even become a state. There's a constitutional precedence to be able to fight that if we had an AG with a backbone, to be able to say this was done, when this agreement was gone into it was illegal because it was not equal footing with the rest of the states. And we can go along on those ends. That's one way to do it, through the court system. Through the legislation system, we can do a lot of things like we're joining with other states to try to get blocks of votes in Congress and the Senate to be able to override things. And even on the state level, there are ways to, basically you have to protest the law, to fight the law type sort of things, and that's sort of what Bundy's doing. He's protesting it very directly to raise the issue and awareness. And if you raise the awareness enough, you can build enough popular support that it will be impossible to actually enforce the rules that people do not agree with. Sort of like how Prohibition ended. Prohibition ended because the jury members said not guilty. No matter what the evidence was, not guilty. It's called annulment, or nullification. And if we get popular enough support for that, we can have nullification of any federal law.
We still have the 21st Amendment before the 18th Amendment could be nullified. We in Nevada twice have had initiatives to take back our land. As we mentioned earlier, between a commission recently found that between $30 and $100 million would be added if we had more control over the land. And I'm a great advocate for that. Let's try to get our land back. It's a very sticky issue, however, because in 1864 when we drafted our Constitution, and I don't think it was actually, as I recall, I was just a young child back then, but as I recall, that they wanted us into the Union. It wasn't a gun in our heads. They wanted us to come into the Union to help support the North. And so it's a matter that Congress is going to have to resolve. But I agree with my opponent that we need to have a coalition to work with the other states to try to get public opinion on our side. The problem is it's hard to get public opinion when the eastern states and the Midwestern states, they themselves control most of their land themselves, and out here in the West, of course, we don't, and we just don't have the votes in Congress at this point. So we're going to have to convince those Midwesterners and those Easterners, a lot of whom have come out here to retire, that we need control of our space. So I hope we can work together better with Utah, with Wyoming, and Idaho, and Arizona, California, and Montana, and so forth, to try to get that coalition going and convince Congress that we can take care of ourselves. We send them $100 and we only get back between 60 and 70 cents. And so I think with us subsidizing many of the other states, we should have a little more freedom ourselves.
Hi, my question is for Richard. Just a minute ago, you talked about reducing property taxes or where there's no property taxes. As a real estate broker, I'm very familiar with how it pays for education, fire, et cetera, et cetera. How would you intend to do that? That just seems to be such a hornet's nest to even consider.
Well, anything worth doing is going to be hard, but it's going to take a lot of restructuring, whether it be structuring into some sort of apportioned tax on the sale of home, but then you never have to pay property tax on top of other things. Like being able to, like Mr. Stewart said, we give $1 to the federal government, we only get 60 or 70 cents back. We can create nonprofit entities where businesses can donate to offset these needs for these programs. So those dollars never go to the federal government, they get chopped up and sent back. They stay in the state if we can create tax deductible entities. And they can be very well defined, where if you donate to this entity, it will go to education, it will go to fire, it will go to police. And I believe businesses want to keep their money in the state and not give it to the feds.
But that is property tax pretty much, in education, et cetera. I mean, don't you think there's more important things to focus on than the reduction of property tax?
Oh, but like I said, my number one priority is going to be zero-based budgeting. I was just saying, there's a long list of things we can do to make living here cheaper. And when we make living here cheaper, we attract more people to live here. When we attract more people to live here, we increase our tax base. Because as Republicans, we want to increase the number of taxpayers, not squeeze the ones we have for more dollars.
We've got to be careful on attracting too many more people here. There's a big elephant in the room. It's called water, and our water resources are limited. So we have to be very careful on our growth. Our growth has to be very carefully planned. I know our cities. I work closely with Henderson, with Las Vegas, with North Las Vegas, and the property tax has gone down drastically over the last 10 years because the property values have gone down drastically. And all of our city governments are struggling because of that. So if we reduce the property taxes further, our services are going to be greatly limited, and we're going to be in a bigger bind, a much bigger bind than we are now. So I want to stay the course.
Any other questions of the panel?
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here today. I'd like to know from both of you if either of you have heard of Agenda 21, yes or no? Mr. Bunce?
What?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
What?
UN Agenda 21.
UN Agenda 21. I've heard the number. I don't know what it is.
Have either of you heard of ICLEI, Mr. Bunce?
Can you name that out?
No. I could once, but I'm 45 now, and I'm going to use that till the day I die. Mr. Stewart, have you heard of ICLEI?
I don't like much of anything the United Nations does, so I kind of ignore anything dealing with it.
Common Core, Mr. Bunce?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Oh, yes. So like 10 hours last week of Common Core.
And can both of you give me your opinions on dedicated bicycle lanes, dedicated bus lanes, and HOV lanes?
It seems like more of a county and city ordinance. But again, the state could pass laws to limit those in scope or in size. So I suppose I'm not really familiar with the studies of what they save in lives and in time and in money to see if it offsets the cost of actually building them. So I have to claim ignorance on the subject.
Thank you.
I would never ride in a bicycle lane myself. The traffic is too bad. There's plenty of bicycle trails in areas both in the south and the northwest. I would prefer to have people stay on the bicycle trails away from the traffic. However, I'm not going to vote against it if I could, which we don't do things like that. If the bicycle rider wants to get in the lane and risk his life in there, that's his choice. I would never do it.
I would just like to bring to both of your attention that the lanes, the money that's being spent to build bicycle lanes is being paid for by motorists. The people who those lanes are dedicated for don't pay for them. People who pay for them can't use them. And the same applies to bus lanes and HOV lanes. So food for thought. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, on your website, it says that you believe in shrinking government, not growing it. So what is your strategy? How do you go out there and shrink government and not grow it? Because the people who are on government programs, what do? Just take it away from them? You can't take it away from them.
No.
It's impossible.
as I said, my first priority would be fighting for something called zero-based budgeting, where we go through and we find the programs that may have been created 10 years ago, even 3 years ago, that no longer serve purpose, or maybe are overfunded, but nobody actually looked at what they do. Right now, programs just live forever, and they just get incrementally increased with the baseline of budgeting.
Which programs?
Exactly.
Name 3 programs you want to remove.
Exactly. That's why you have zero-based budgeting, so that every department has to go up there and list the priorities and what they do, so you find those things that can be reduced.
My friends on the Ways and Means Committee and my colleagues and I on the Taxation Committee, we are very, very into spending and controlling spending. And we look very, very carefully at the budgets that come in. And we are not adverse to questioning and to chopping things off. As I said before, we are a frugal state. We are not like Congress. We are a frugal state. And my goal is to keep us frugal, not to try to do away with various programs. But we do have a committee that was set up to do away with committees. And they've done away with several committees, several institutions that have not met for some time. So those programs are in effect, and we're doing away with waste, but there's very little waste in Nevada. We are frugal, we're tight. We are tight. Even the Democrats, compared to other Democrats in the East and the Midwest, they're very frugal people.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. Okay, this one is for Richard Bunce. Richard, I've known you for some time now, and I've seen your involvement in the community, and I've always enjoyed your passion for what you do and what you believe in and how you stand up for those principles. With that being said, how do you go from being an activist to now a candidate to being a leader? Because that's an interesting transition. A guy sitting up in the White House right now, he had to make that same transition too, and he hasn't done so well. So how can you prove that you won't end up the same way?
Being a political activist, you pick up a lot of skill sets to organize and to lead and to inspire people to do the work and make the change happen. As an individual, I am only but an individual. I cannot make the change. But what I can do is inspire. And when I inspire one person, that doubles my strength. When I inspire 3 people, it quadruples my strength. And it goes on and on that way. Where if you get a large enough audience and you inspire thousands, change will happen.
Thank you for that question. I'd like to see him inspire some of my Democratic friends up there. It takes more than rhetoric to do that, let me tell you.
I'll have a chance.
I wouldn't bet on your chances, let me tell you.
All right, any other questions?
I'm satisfied with Mr. Stewart's response, but Mr. Bunce, when I asked the question about education, I don't feel like you completely answered it. We have finger-pointing culture. No, it's the teachers. No, it's the parents. But at the end of the day, it's going to end up in all of our front yards.
Yes.
So how do you suppose that we address the disparities that exist in our community in Southern Nevada in terms of health, in terms of education being number 50 in the nation? We have to equip our children with proper defense mechanisms before we expect them to go out and clip their wings and be self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's about empowerment. We have to empower the parents to have choice over their school. Right now, whatever zip code you live in, you're trapped to that school. We can make changes where parents have more power to move their kids around and make decisions about what they're taught and where they're taught. It's about empowering the principals. Right now, the principals are hamstrung by the admin for what they can do. And if they have a list, most principals you talk to, they have a list of 10, 12 teachers they want to get rid of, but they can't. So it's about empowering them to make the hard choices to trim the fat and make their schools better. They also have a list of 10 or 12 teachers that their productivity is 3 or 4 times more than the average teacher. I want to be able to reward them. Because when I can reward them, that's a big flag and advertisement to every other teacher in America saying, you come to Nevada, you're rewarded for the work you do. at the same time, we need to look at how the money is allocated to the schools. It's a few layers of problem. Mr. Stewart likes to talk about how the Southern Nevada doesn't get its fair share, which is true. But at the same time, the schools don't get their fair share. Only about a third of the dollars in K through 12 gets to the actual school in the classroom. We can do a lot of things to get the checks to the schools first, and what programs that school individually needs, because every school is different. Because this one size fits all is not going to work, because inner city schools have different requirements than rural schools, or schools out at the top of the valley to the end of the valley. And depending on what their needs are, they will then pay the admin for those programs and not the other way around.
Could I join in on that? To say the principals are hamstringed, we have what are called empowerment schools in the Clark County School District, where the principal has greater power than the average public schools. We've also had career and technical education schools throughout the valley, where kids from all over the valley can go to those schools. So they're not necessarily restricted to their own area. We have a lot of creative programs. It's easier now because of legislation which the governor proposed and which the legislature passed. It's easier to get rid of poor teachers, and 92 poor teachers will be gotten rid of this semester in the Clark County School District. So things are happening to improve education, and empowerment is taking place. I agree that the parents are the key, but one of our problems is a lot of our parents don't get engaged. We have a lot of parents that have English language problems themselves. And some of our schools are addressing that. They're having classes for computer classes and English classes for the parents to get them more engaged. So things are happening, things are being done. We're not just sitting on our hands.
Yes, you can empower the parents even further by encouraging to participate when you do things like the parent trigger law, which parents that are part of a school system can actually have voting rights to make changes at the school, to turn it into a charter school. And then furthermore, give parents voting rights to maybe even be able to veto programs, or maybe even be able to fire the principal if enough parents feel he's not doing the job. There are things we can do to empower the parents where they don't feel helpless. Because a lot of parents feel helpless. They feel they drop their kid off at school, it looks like a prison, it must be a prison, I have no power here. We can do a lot of change to actually entice the parents to become more involved with the educational system if we give them more power.
Do we have any other questions? Anything from anybody from the audience? Well, Mr. Bunce and Mr. Stewart, thank you for your time and participating today. We appreciate it.
I just want to say,